All right, hello everyone. We are at 9 a.m. Do we have everyone back? If you're back, go ahead and raise your hand, or I guess we could all say hellos, but probably easier just to see your raised hand. Great. Adam, Lori, Jonathan, Don, Jim, Nani, Raymond. Zach, I don't know if I saw your hand flip on off. Are you back? Charlie, are you with us? Adam, are you here and ready to go? Thank you, bud. Okay, if anybody has any questions before we get started, just come off mute and ask away, and then we'll dive into planning out our first report and creating our first report. All right, well, let's get into it. So, as I was saying at the beginning, it is hard to create helpful, insightful reports. I feel like it's something that kind of either you are just really good at designing reports, and that's happened probably because you've had a lot of experience in the area you're in, or it kind of just happens over time and a report forms as something that's okay and kind of helpful and it grows along the way, and you figure out just that exact right amount of this ingredient and that ingredient. We are going to jump over just to a text doc. I'm going to throw in report 1. We're going to choose a graphical report. So we're kind of envisioning this, what is the title? Well, I mean, title comes with time, but what is the purpose of this report? So for us, we want to view all of the land use permit division jobs in a chart that have been created by month. And really, I'm imagining, okay, we could have this as maybe a line graph or a column graph, and we're just seeing, how many, we're taking into account how many jobs are created each month. Yeah.
Hey, Chris, why don't you go ahead and just increase the font size on zoom in a little bit on your screen there, just so we can definitely read.
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. How do we actually increase font size?
Command scroll or control scroll?
Maybe, but let's find out. Yes.
There we go. Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
So to do this, all right, we have a purpose. We just want to know how many jobs are being created each month. Great. For the land use permit division. So we know we have a data source called LUPD jobs, and these have the jobs for land use permits. Great. So this is a part of the design, is figuring out, hey, what is in corral that will meet the requirements for my purpose? All right, we need to select a data source. Here it is. This is that view, and it's going to have a certain amount of columns in that. So maybe I need to go research that as well as you're creating this design. Do I have everything I need for this report, or do I need to put in a request to get that? So just some of the thought process here. Okay, column or line is how I'm envisioning that. What needs to go in our x-axis and our y-axis? So I'm thinking, all right, we want to see by the month, so a created date, because when the job was created, perfect. For the count, I want to have something that is unique. So job ID is a unique identifier. I don't necessarily need to, I put here distinct count, but I don't necessarily need to do a distinct count since job ID is unique. And for the view we're looking at, it shouldn't be repeating, but I can do that as well. So we'll get to see that. Up here, I put the manual section that talks about reports. So I could flip over here if I had any questions before I got started on this. And let's see if I can just type in reports, get to the reports tab. I also saw, if I go back, I saw report parts as well. And I could go there instead. And okay, in report parts, again, well, what type of report parts are there? There's grid report part. I can scroll down and find more information about a chart report part. So where we're going, I'm going to take a few minutes and just start this report up, and then I'm going to switch over to you, and you're going to do the same thing. And I will have somebody present. If there's somebody who's thinking, hey, pick me, go ahead and let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to just grab somebody from the list and have you present your screen while you're doing the same work that I'm doing over the next couple minutes. Okay, report. We're going to create one. Data source. So this is selecting what I have access to. And we've already, so each one of the views is here that you have in Corral. And in addition to that, we have put in relationships. So when I select any of these, it will narrow down what other views I can connect to by a relationship that has already been set up. In this case, we're just selecting the LUPD jobs. I can scroll down and find LUPD jobs, or I can use this search. So LUPD, here we go. I can select that. Now, one thing to note in Izenda, every time you do a search like this, you're going to need to remove it. Oh, excuse me. I just threw that off the page. You're going to need to remove what you put in the search to open it back up. So it is still filtering by whatever you put in there. So now that I've removed that, I can see that LUPD jobs has relationships to users as well as things. So here we have selected LUPD jobs. We don't need any other views to come with us. And we see down here that we have our LUPD jobs data object. Over here on the left, you'll see that we're at data source. So we have to select this first. Then we can move down to design. At this point, I don't want to save this because only if you have only selected a data source and you haven't created a report part, it will only let you save it as a template. And we will discuss templates later today. They can be useful, but our objective is to create a report right now. So we're going to go to design. And what are some of the things we can do here? So all I'm going to do is put in the name that we had decided. LUPD jobs created per month. I'm also going to put a dash, and I'll have every one of you do this today as we're creating these, because we don't want 12 reports with the same exact name, and I don't think it'll actually allow that. So I'm going to put a dash CDP to know that, hey, that's my report that I've created. So please put your initials following your reports that you do today. All right, great. So I have a name for my report, and I will see that out in the reports tab. And then I'm going to come down. I can either use this button to add report part, or I can just come down and click on what type of report part I want to add. Here you see it says to create a report part, select a type. So I'm just going to go ahead and click chart. Fantastic. So I will stop right here. And who would like to share their screen and get to where I am? All right, I'm picking somebody off the list. Who is in LUPD? I'm looking.
Zach or Maylene.
Zach or Maylene.
Zach's got his hand up. Let's do Zach. Let's do Zach.
Zach. Good. Selected by I'm gonna stop presenting, and
That should
go
allow
ahead.
Zach to click the button. Yeah.
All right.
And it'll just ask you what screen or monitor you want to share.
Okay.
Great. We see exactly where you are. So you're already, you've created a report. You're already in selecting the data source. Nice. What are you going to do next?
Ask you for help.
Great. I am currently, my job is to help you today. So great.
I'll jump in here real quick. So Chris noted this earlier, but he talked about the relationships in the data there. So what we can see is that list has now filtered down to just fees and users. And those are there because in the data for the LUPD jobs, there exist relationships or connections to other tables. So it's only filtered down to the ones that also have those sorts of relationships. So for example, the fees one is available because the LUPD jobs have fees that are related to them. So if you wanted to report on the fees for LUPD jobs, those are actually available to you to connect. So that's why the fees are available. And then the users, there's also a user, I believe it is where are we?
It's the application fee, accepted user ID.
So with the application fee, user ID is connected to the users table or who was the one who processed that payment. So the reason that those two tables exist there are because the information in the LUPD jobs table links to other tables that you might also want to report on.
Thank you, Sam. All right, so Zach, you're going to head over to design at this point. You have selected your data source, which is always step one for this. And then head over to design. On the left-hand side, you'll see your contextual menu. And yep, it's the second item down. So I actually really enjoy how they've listed that menu in kind of order, make it easy of what you're going to be doing. So great, now you're in a design. You've already added the name of this report, and you'll go down into the report body, and you can click on chart. We're wanting to build a chart type of report. So this is adding, to get our terminology in sync, this is adding a report part. Perfect. So that's as far as I went. I'm going to actually let you continue sharing your screen, Zach, and walk you through the next step. So we said that we wanted the created month to be in our x-axis. Will you go ahead and go over, you see under your data source, you see created date.
Yeah.
Go ahead and drag that over to the x-axis down in the report body. Great. Now we'll do it a different way. So you can drag from the list you see on the left, or you can do a different way, is to go down and click into the y-axis. So you see drag or add field. There's a plus button next to the y-axis values. You can click on that, and then you can select. So here, we're going to select job ID. But you could select one or multiple, depending on what you're doing, fields this way. So you kind of get used to which way you want to do this. And off the bat, you'll see that Izenda or Ad Hoc has made some assumptions of what you're trying to create here. It knows it's looking at that number that's coming in and going, well, maybe they want to sum it together. So I'll go ahead and steal over presenting, and we'll talk about our, you'll see this menu on the right called Field Properties, and we'll get this realigned to what we're expecting to see. But
and so while Chris is doing the presentation, and Zach, you can go ahead and just unshare your screen so then Chris can then start showing his. Are there any questions so far regarding that the first initial steps in working with Ad Hoc and getting into creating a report? Has everybody been able to follow along to this point?
Yeah, if you are having any trouble, Jonathan, go ahead.
No, just acknowledging that I was following along till that point.
Okay, great.
Sounds good.
Glad to hear it. If you're having any trouble getting the report to where Zach had it, which I'm going to go ahead and catch up with Zach real quick, let us know, and we'll get you there. So I'm doing the same. I'm getting created date into my x-axis. Then I'm getting job ID into my y-axis. All right, so you'll see I do not have much screen real estate, especially as I'm zoomed in a little bit, but this is almost as if I was on a smaller screen. Yeah,
Hey,
real estate
Chris?
starts filling. Oh, go ahead.
I'm actually kind of doing and copying and moving along like you guys are, but if I try to create or try to drag created date into the x-axis, all I get is a circle with a line through it. Like it won't let me do it.
How about do you want to present your screen and we take a real quick look at that?
Can, if you want.
Yeah, I'll unpresent, and yeah, I don't off the top of my head know exactly what's happening, so much easier to see it.
So how do I do it again? How do I do the present
So
screen?
if you go to the meeting where you can see us, there's a middle button,
screen.
a little share screen button. It probably looks like a little laptop with an arrow.
With an up arrow, yeah.
Oh yeah, I see it.
And then it should have you choose a monitor or a application that you want to share.
And then you click the share button.
Wow, this is slow.
Yeah, when it's first kicking on the screen share, it might take a moment, but
There we go. All right, go ahead and try to drag it in again, and let's just see what's going on. Yep, it looks like you have the right data source.
so hover
Yeah.
there for just a moment, and then does it work to grab it from the plus button on the right?
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know what's going on. It looks like, just from what I see, that you have everything set up correctly.
Okay, they took it from the plus button.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think one of the things is there's a little bit of, I think with the video going right now, it's being a little bit slower on the network. And that might be causing it to act just a little bit funky. I'm sure it'll be a lot smoother when the video is turned off later. But right now, I think it's probably just the site taking a while to load and tell you that you're good to go to drop it in with the drag and drop.
Okay.
So. Great.
Nice
Good
job,
question.
Charlie.
You go ahead and stop sharing, and we'll go ahead and switch back to Chris.
Thank you. All right. So Charlie's getting to where we are here, and I think everybody is here. You'll see right off the bat, okay, we have a field name job ID. I can't play around with that. We see this sum job ID field name alias. That is what's going to be presented out here in our graph. So that's something we'll clean up later. Again, we're just starting to, it's very quick and easy to get reports, kind of get the data source in place, get the main pieces in place, and then you're going to spend a lot of your time doing this last 10% of work is where you spend the vast majority of your time, getting it, tweaking it to have it look just right, to have it feel like a created report that is polished. So here we're still in the functionality of, hey, you know what, this isn't the data that I want to be showing anybody. The sum of the job IDs is really not getting me what I need. So here I'm going to go into my function. This is grouping function, and I'm going to count distinct. So we're going to take the count of the job IDs, and well, right now we're doing it by year. If I look down here, and if I can actually read that, we're doing it by year. So we see that we still have a little ways to go. All right, let's switch over now that I have that corrected to our created date. And again, you can, at this point, you can be following along with me, or I'll give you a little bit of time as well once I'm done chatting. Grouping function. So here we're grouping this, and we're currently grouping it by year, but I really want this grouped by month to meet the purpose of this report. So I can select month, year, so you can see that my date formats, because of what I did in my user profile, I selected month, day, year, as my default way to see dates. That gives me these options here. If I had another selection, my options would look differently. So if you're wondering, hey, Chris, mine's starting out day, month, then head back to my profile up here and switch it over. Or leave it, as long as it's what you and your department have decided is the standard you want. All right, so now I've grouped this by month, year. Fantastic. This is looking more like what I want. You'll see, hey, we're only seeing a small subset of what I would expect for data. So I'm going to take just a moment to come up here and say, this preview records, this holds what you're going to see to this number. So it's only taking the first 10 rows, or 10, in this case, LUPD jobs, and showing this in my preview. So if I wanted to show all, show more, I can. Now, one thing with showing all, if you have a large number of LUPD jobs in this case, or whatever you're working on, it might take some time to load all that each time you're making changes. So usually we have this narrowed down to a smaller number, so you get an idea of what you're going to expect when you run your report. So I'm going to switch this over to 100, and now I get to see the results of doing that. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and save my report. I haven't done that here, and I have the foundation, and we can build on top of this foundation at this point. So I'm going to save this. Great, report name looks good. Category, I'm going to select land use permit division. Actually, excuse me, I'm not going to do that. We'll try to keep your test environment a little cleaner. So I'm going to actually select training. So we have created a category called training, just to make it a little easier for this. And I don't need a subcategory, but if I want to add one, I can type into this field and then click enter. So, and once I click enter, it would create that subcategory. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to just click away. It goes away, saving this under training. And I believe I'm clicking the button. Let's find out.
While Chris is getting this figured out, I did want to talk just a moment about the count of job ID that Chris was using there for his y-axis. The job ID is something, job ID, process ID, or object ID are a column you're going to see on basically every single data set throughout the entire system. And that's our way of uniquely identifying a particular job or particular process or particular object in the system. So anytime you want to get a count of all of the things that you're seeing, in this case, we wanted to count all of the jobs for a particular month. Those, you would just be using the job ID as something to count, because that's our unique way, kind of behind the scenes, our unique way of identifying what job is which. And typically you guys would see a file number in the back, the file number in the back of POSSE that you typically don't see is the ID or the job ID or process ID. So as we're moving forward, just keep that in your mind as sort of that unique identifier for each job, object, or process.
All right.
Christy.
I'm waiting for this to save. I'm at some level assuming that we are just pegging test.
Ungodly slow.
And I think the Honolulu network isn't even quite back up to full speed anyway, so we're running into probably hits from both sides. Let me see if I can take a look at what's actually hitting test right now, so I might be able to speed things up.
While we're hanging out for a moment, any questions at this point or any thoughts?
Yeah, this is Ray.
Because things are moving really slow, you might want to slow your procedure down a little bit, because if I'm trying to keep up with you, I can't, because the steps that I'm taking take longer than what it takes you. So all of a sudden I find myself a step or two or three behind.
Okay. Yeah.
Sounds good.
That sounds like a great plan. We'll switch a little bit more back to I show and do, and then you guys go ahead and do that. And I think that'll keep us, keep you from feeling that way, or keep everyone from getting a little behind. So I appreciate that. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, this is Ray. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can, Ray.
Yeah, will there be any like error messages you're trying to relate to sources that cannot be related? Is that possible? Would you see an error message?
That's a good question. So as of right now, how we have the system set up, and let me head back here and see, okay. If I can get to, well, I won't switch off this report to go show you, but what's happening is we have predetermined the relationships in your environment. So between the views, we predetermined them. So you will not be able to select two tables that are not related. So to answer your question is, no, you won't see an error message, but that's because you won't have the opportunity to do that.
Okay. My other question is, if I don't see my data source, who creates it?
Great question. I'll answer that. So I kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier, but we have a data warehouse where all of this is being stored. So it's not actually pulling directly from POSSE, where we see all the jobs and details and stuff. It's actually taking from POSSE. It's got a syncing procedure, which takes certain items from POSSE and moves them into the data warehouse. And that's what we're currently looking at. And that is a smaller subset than everything that's in POSSE. So right now I mean, specifically for planning, there is not a particularly, like, I don't know if there's much at all for planning in Corral right now, because there hasn't been a need for it in the past. That's not to say that you guys can't make great use of it now. So if there are particular things you would love to see in Corral so you guys can report on, you can submit a GIS work request. That's going to go through Jim. Just maybe quickly list out all of the things that you would like to see in Corral. Jim can pass that through to us, and that basically enables us to be able to go in and add whatever kinds of columns and tables you guys are looking at reporting on.
Okay. Right now, not everyone has the securities to see existing data on POSSE. So we might be asking for data that's already there. We just don't know it's there because we can't see it. You know, we have a complete list of all the data sources that we can choose from to put it into Corral.
So as far as a complete list of everything that's in POSSE that could be put into Corral?
Yeah, some kind of a spreadsheet that says, oh, we have this data, but I need to work with it. So we got to ask Hollis to put it in. Besides, don't know it's there, then, and if you wouldn't know to get it. But if you know it's missing, then you can say, oh, can you create this data, you know, by linking whatever, yeah.
Okay, that's a great question, Ray, and that's something so we don't necessarily, so what we have right now is a dictionary of everything that's currently in Corral, but we don't necessarily have a dictionary of everything that's currently in POSSE, because that's a lot of stuff. So we could certainly provide to you a pretty simple list of everything out of POSSE in a way that is more accessible to you. But I would have to take a look at that. So what I'm going to do is I'm taking a note on that, and I will follow up with you later after I can talk with maybe Andy and see what our possibilities are for getting you a good list of stuff that you would be able to report on, because that's kind of a larger scale question. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
And one of the pieces Sam just mentioned is that there is a data dictionary of exactly what views are in Corral, what relationships are in Corral, and what details are in each view. So what fields that have been taken from POSSE and are available to you for reporting. And I think that will be a very good place to start to see if something that you're looking for is missing. And then you can get into where does that exist and how do we add that. Any other questions right now before we're going to go back and make sure we're all in the same place, and then we're going to take a step forward. Any other questions?
Yeah, you may have already mentioned this, but we're not supposed to see the like black DOS type screen that you have, right? Or are we?
It's a command.
Oh yeah. Are we talking about this?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is just an editor.
Okay.
So this is Visual Studio Code, and that's just something I use for notes and in this case displaying some notes.
Okay.
So no, this is on my computer, and no, you shouldn't be seeing it. But I wanted to show it to you so we can keep having a place to come back and talk about, hey, what was in our design and what are we off going to do? Because really one of the biggest parts of putting a report together is knowing what you're after, then knowing what is your functionality, so what can ad hoc do, also knowing what is in Corral, what data do I have access to? You guys in POSSE are collecting all this data, and then it's really hard to narrow that down to what's going to be helpful and useful. But as you do each one of those steps, those kind of three areas, what data do I have? What functionality do I have? What is my purpose for this report? It's one of the biggest pieces of going into ad hoc and having a game plan and doing, being able to get your objective done. So right here at this point, we want to have essentially a really rough report built that includes our data grouped in the right way so it's displaying what we expect. Is there anybody who needs to spend a little more time, and we go back and talk about how we grouped this data so that I could get where I am currently, this rough report of created dates for the x-axis that are grouped by month and year. So for us, this is normal how we can see data in chronological order. And we're taking a count of the job ID so that we know, hey, back in August of 2000, we had, let's get to August, we had 61 LUPD jobs created. any questions to get to here? All right, we're going to take the next step. So as you see my screen after I saved, it brought me out to out from what I was working on to this is essentially the design view. So when you go to edit a report, this is where you start in your editing. To get into this report part, I'm going to need to hover my cursor over the top of the report part, and then this menu comes up. Sometimes this feels a little bit tricky. Especially in an RDP session, it can feel that way. So try to just wiggle your mouse around at the top, and then you'll come over to the right-hand side of this report, and you'll see a couple things: copy, move, or sorry, full screen, which will launch this to a full screen. And then your third option is switch to configuration. Your fourth option is to delete. So we don't want to delete this. Right now, we want to go back in and configure this report further. So I'm going to click that box with an arrow in it. And none of you need to be doing this at the moment. We will stop here once I make a few updates, and we'll have somebody present their screen and we'll go through this together. Okay, the next thing I want to do, I want to add some filters. So right now we're displaying, if I set this preview to be all records, we would be displaying all records for all, well, just all records. So back to the 90s that we saw there for LUPD jobs. I want to put some filters in. And one thing I want to filter on is created date. I want to be able to put in a date range and only see results for that range. Another thing, since we are talking about different jobs, hey, I would like to add in a filter, and sorry, that would be this one. Hey, I would like to add in a filter that allows me to only see certain jobs. So, and lastly, I have status description. So if I want to also filter to jobs and certain statuses, I can do that. So let's go through some of these in. All right, so first one, create a date. I want to be able to have a date range. So I can push the plus button up here, or I can come down here and drag created date over. I'm going to push the plus button just so we can, again, see something a little different. All right, so let's go ahead and take created date, and let's move that in. And while I'm at it, I might as well take, so I might have some misnamings here, and I might actually not have all of the columns that I would naturally expect to be here.
Chris, yeah. It's looking like you're not, it's not updating the screen. I think we need to wait for a second for the presentation to catch up because it's not moving at all.
Well, okay, do you currently see what I think I'm presenting is a pop-up?
No, we only see your mouse on the filters thing underneath the plus button. That's all. It's right on top.
I'm sorry. So I'm not going to do it this way. I'm going to go back and just drag in because my pop-ups are not being displayed through the screen share.
We see it.
Oh,
I saw the pop-up.
Oh, really? So is that just me? Could be just me.
Might be just you, Samuel.
Yeah, probably.
Oh, man. Don't make it Sam's problem. All right, so I'm just going to drag created date over. Okay, so I've created, I've dragged created date over. Right here, I see an error message that please press apply filter button after adjusting filter configurations to avoid data dependencies. So I will take that in consideration. To me, that doesn't mean a ton. You'll see quite a bit of error messages just letting you know, hey, you can't keep this the way you you added this in here. You're going to need to modify this a little bit. And off the bat, we can see, well, okay, so when I click on this filter, I'm going to get some options. And I need to decide on those options, how do I want to be able to filter down this data? And we're really going to take a look at, excuse me, so expecting to see another option here. I'll slide over, and I think, here we go. Here's what I'm expecting to see. So I don't want date and time. Entering in a time just sounds like something wasteful of my time. So I just want a date, and I want a range. So I want between 2 dates. Great.
So Chris, I just want to let you know, Charlie got dropped. Maybe just hang on 1 second to see if he can get back in here.
Okay. I'm going to continue forward because we'll have somebody else doing this in just a minute. And I think there's Charlie.
Yeah, I'll keep an eye on that. And then we'll have a break here in a moment too if he needs to get back in there. So, oh, looks like Charlie was able to get back in. Charlie, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, all of a sudden the screen just went gray. I lost all the video, audio, everything.
Yeah. Yeah, the network's definitely getting hit a little bit right now, but looks like we're caught back up. So Chris was just talking about filters here, so you shouldn't be too far behind.
So I've added in this created date filter, and we are going to take, it is a time and date is how this created date's coming in. That's the data type. But what we want is a range of just the date. So between this date and that date, a to and a from date. Great. So I've selected that. I can enter in predetermined, you know, if this is something I just run and I want to see from the beginning of the year or beginning of a fiscal year, I can enter in predetermined dates, and there's even some options that can help me get there to begin with, but I'm going to leave that open for now and just add that in. Perfect. Let's go ahead and, you know what, I'll add in my job type description. I'm not going to add in my status description because I do not have a status description in this table. Right now I have a status ID, and that's not going to get me where I want to go. So I'm going to add the job type description. You saw I labeled this as object depth description in my notes, but I obviously did not look at the table to see what we had here. So now I can say, do we want to have, so right now we're saying, does the job type equal what somebody entered in? And I want to modify this a little bit and say, okay, we're using equivalence, which is great because I do want to equal what is added. Do I want to only allow people to use one job type, or do I want to allow them to use one or more job types, or excuse me, 0 or more really job types? So, okay, let's go ahead and let them add this in. I'm going to switch from manual entry to, I would like people to be able to select from the available options. So those options will be auto-populated by what we have available to us. And I can go ahead and click on this and predetermine what is placed here. And I think it's running a query to see what options are available. I'm going to hop out of there because I don't want to have this presets. I want everything available. And if somebody wants to narrow it down with the filter, that will be great. So, okay, it did load. You can see what would be available off the bat.
Okay, and I see that Ray has his hand up. Ray, did you have a question for this?
No, I was somehow signed out, and then I had to sign back in, start all over. Sorry. I don't know if anybody else is having that problem.
It can lose connection after a little while, and some of that is due to the network stuff going on in Honolulu still, I think. So just keep bearing with it and just following along with what Chris is doing, at least watching, and then seeing if you can catch back up when we have somebody else come in here and do it. So, yeah.
Okay.
We'll just continue to monitor that.
Yeah,
I guess I'll just go ahead
and
and jump in here real quick as well and just remind you that, so the reason we're able to have a filter on job type description is because we're looking at a table that has lots of different job types or permit types in it. So the LUPD jobs table is specifically designed to be an aggregate of a bunch of LUPD jobs all at the same time for reporting on the group as a whole. And you know, that's how we search for all these different kinds of jobs that are all together. Most of the time when you see a table, it will normally, you might also see like just building permits or just, you know, correspondence logs or something like that. And those tables are specifically only that job type or permit type. And that's all you're ever going to see. But in this particular instance, we see a list that has a bunch of different kinds of jobs all kind of smushed together. So one of the things we might want to give people a filter on is the ability to filter down to only one particular type of job that is found in the list.
Oh, can I ask a hello?
Hi there. Yep.
Hey, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I tried to save my report, and it wouldn't save. And so because it signed out, I got to start from scratch. Do you know why it wouldn't save? It just had this continuous rotating bar.
Okay, again, I can only say that the network has been problematic and slower in Honolulu as of today, from what I can tell. So maybe the best we can do right now for those experiencing lag is to just watch Chris and try to absorb as much as possible and try to get some experience later. We'll be in on Monday. Hopefully things will be quicker then, and you can get a little more experience clicking around on things. I imagine it will also be faster once we have the video turned off. That could also be causing things to slow on your machine itself. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ray. And I can spend a little time with you over the break, Ray, if you'd like to rebuild that. So, all right, we're going to move forward. We're talking about adding filters. We added 2 filters. I'm just going to come over here and update what I've added to my design. Then I'm going to have somebody go ahead and show their screen. And let's add these 2 filters and change the settings on those filters. I'm going to save this as well. Who would like to share their screen? Maylene? Would you like to lead us through this next step?
Sure.
Great. I will quit presenting. And you can go ahead and present your screen, and we'll just walk through this together. And everybody can jump in, and we're adding, right now, we're adding 2 different filters to our report.
Okay. So I was following along when you were talking, and you could add the filters by clicking on the plus button or dragging from the left side to this blank spot.
Yep,
I did that with this, and then if you need to add filters, change dates, you just click on this empty spot too, and this box appears, and you can make those adjustments.
Very nice.
Same thing here.
Okay.
And then you'll get your warning, and you click on apply filter, but I don't think you're at that point yet.
Oh, you can go ahead and do that.
Oh, okay.
I didn't do that, but you can. You can show us what happens when we apply the filter.
Oh,
Right.
okay.
So you added in some dates. You added in, I think it was from 10/2020 to 12/2020, and
Yeah.
so it just applied that, and now you get to see what data you have filtered down to. So that is great.
So, and again, this goes back to what I was mentioning earlier. Since you're looking at data from just the last month and we are in the test environment and not production, there are not many land use permits jobs there. The ones you're seeing there, Maylene, are most likely the ones that were added as part of testing the new PD job. So if you put the date to before July of this year at any point, you'll see a lot more normal looking data for actual volumes.
All right. Is there anybody who has any questions right now that we can help you get to this place or understand something? Okay. No questions. I'm going to stick around during the break. Well, I'll take a few minutes and then I'll be back. So Ray, if you'd like some help, if anybody would like some help during the break, just let me know. I'll be back in just a few minutes. And we'll see everybody else at the top of the hour.